So, I haven't uploaded a long-form YouTube video since August of 2023. And I think we need to talk about why. So one thing that I feel like travel content creators don't talk about enough is that very frequent travel. And we were basically doing almost full-time travel. Like, we still maintained a home base in New York that we would come to between trips, but we were on the road like maybe 200 days out of the year. And the thing is, like, when you do very, very frequent travel like that, it can honestly become kind of like a form of addiction. You're always trying to chase that new high, but every time the high doesn't feel quite as high as the last time. And then the time in between trips are the lows, right? And then every low feels like a little bit lower than last time. And so you're constantly going between these two states of like euphoria, you're on the trip, you're so excited, and then you're like, oh, and now we're home. And for our family especially, the time between the trips was when I actually had to like make the content. And so we would be doing all these trips, having an amazing time, shooting everything. And then when we got home, I would basically be in like my, virtual cave for the days that we were home so that I could use all of that time to edit, upload the videos, and then we were on to the next trip. And essentially what happened is it became a really, really unhealthy dynamic. So during the trips, we felt very connected, we were together, we were enjoying each other's company. But then when we came home, there was like both a sense of like, oh, we need to rest, but then also a sense of like, we need a little bit of separation from each other because we're together all the time. And so basically our life became these extremes where we'd be like, la 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 la, like all excited, high energy, lots of connection. And then we get home and it's like low energy. We're all in different parts of the house. We're kind of like together, but alone. And it just became a really unhealthy dynamic. And I think part of that was because like when travel becomes such a big part of your identity, it's easy to lose track of who you are outside of travel. So it's kind of like when you're not traveling, then you're like, wait, who am I? Or who are we as a family when there's no travel? And basically going through that experience made me realize that having our entire lives revolve around travel and content was just incredibly, incredibly unhealthy. So as 2022 came to a close, we decided that, next year we're gonna need a change. We're gonna slow way down with travel. We need to spend more time at home. And also, we've done this like almost full-time travel thing for like 2.5 years. It's really time for us to live a bit of a more normal life. And so last summer, Serge actually started a new job. And then last fall, the girls actually started back in public school. And 2023 was like the perfect year for us to do this because Ella was starting middle school and Sean was starting high school. So it was kind of like the perfect time for them to go from homeschooling back into public school. So basically we only homeschooled them for a couple years. Back into public school at a time when like friendship circles hadn't been formed yet and they could really kind of like immerse themselves in school life again. So, as a family, we decided to slow down with the travel. And being that Serge was in this new job and the girls were back in school, neither Serge nor the girls were able to take off massive amounts of time to travel like we used to be able to do. So that explains like the travel side, but now we have to talk about the YouTube side. What exactly happened when it comes to the long form YouTube videos? So honestly, the YouTube hiatus started totally by accident. I didn't set out to take a break from YouTube, but basically what happened is I was on, our usual weekly upload schedule. And then there was one week where I was like, crap, I have these multiple deadlines to hit for like sponsorship stuff. So I'm not gonna be able to finish this video this week. Then 1 week turned into 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into a month, 1 month turned into like 3 months, and pretty soon I was like, oh my God, we haven't published a new YouTube video in like months now. And then being that we'd taken this hiatus, it got me thinking, do I actually want to go back to posting weekly long-form videos anymore? Because one thing I realized is that no longer having to spend like 40 hours a week editing YouTube videos, like just being free of that had freed up so much time for me to work on other things. But not just time, it had also freed up like so much mental capacity in my brain. Like for the first time, I actually felt like, wow, I feel really creative. I'm getting all of these ideas. And it's because literally like space has been cleared because I'm not constantly thinking about the next YouTube video that we have to put up. So that was one consideration. But then another really more important consideration was, do I want to keep making YouTube videos because of the impact that it has on our family? And what I mean specifically is that I don't want us to be any more famous than we are. And I know that sounds conceited, and I know that we have a very, very tiny bit of fame in certain corners of the internet. But right now, the level of fame that we have is the perfect amount, in that at least Every trip we run into at least 1 or 2 viewers. Sometimes going around the city, we'll run into viewers. So we are running into people who watch our content infrequently enough that it doesn't feel like a constant violation of privacy. It happens infrequently enough that every time it happens, we're like taken by surprise, but it's a pleasant surprise, and it's like a nice reminder that, oh yeah, this content that we're making, it actually has an impact. There's actually human beings on the other side of the screen watching the stuff. And chances are, if we kept making videos, maybe our channel would stay flat and it would never grow and we'd be at this level of fame forever. But the thing about social media and social media content is that it just takes one video to take off and everything explodes. Like, we've experienced that on different platforms in different ways on multiple occasions. And so it really got me thinking, like, do I want to risk having that one video really pop off in such a huge way that now suddenly we are legit famous, not just famous in this very, very tiny way? And for those of you who are watching this who are maybe a little bit younger, you may be like, how did you not think about becoming famous when you started making YouTube content? But you have to understand that me and Serge, we're Gen Xers. So we not only did we not grow up with social media, we didn't grow up with the internet, and also to us, like, YouTube is just a user-generated content platform. We're not people who grew up watching YouTubers. So to us, like, we don't think of them as celebrities the way I think millennials do, and definitely, Gen Zers do. When we started making content, in 2016, it was mostly about blogging. That was kind of the crux of our content. And then as we moved into video, I was like, yeah, I'm sure we're gonna like garner an audience. But I can tell you that I never thought that I would actually run into people in real life who watched our stuff. Like, that, the idea of that happening, like, didn't even occur to me. And the thing you have to understand about me is that when it comes to like personal values, freedom is probably my #1 value. Freedom and control are kind of tied because I am very much a control freak. But to me, like, having the freedom to be able to go where I want, do what I want, when I want, that is so, so important in my life. And to me, fame is like the exact opposite of freedom, because fame is like this prison that you build for yourself where suddenly you don't have that freedom of movement anymore. And freedom of movement is so important, especially now that our girls are back in public school. They take public transport, they go to school by themselves. And the fact that they're able to just take the subway, take the bus, move around the city, hang out with their friends, like, that kind of freedom of movement is such a privilege. And it's a privilege that, frankly, the children of a lot of big family content creators don't have and may never have because of the fame that's been kind of inflicted on them by their parents. So even though our amount of fame is teeny, teeny, tiny in the scheme of things, I just didn't want it to grow beyond where it is now. And you may be wondering, well, what does long form have to do with it? Well, I can tell you that like 99% of the time when we run into viewers, they are watchers of our long form content, not our short form content. Like, yes, we have met a few people who watch, follow us on Instagram or TikTok, but the vast majority of viewers who recognize us and know us, it's from our long form content. And then we also have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the whole concept of having kids in social media content in the first place. And I can tell you that my views on that have evolved a lot from 2016 when we first started to now. I think the internet was very different in 2016 compared to now, and also society in general and opinions and views, all of that is very, very different than it was back in 2016 when we were first getting started. And if I'm gonna be perfectly honest, if I were to start over today and start making content today from scratch, I probably wouldn't have gone about it the same way. And then another thing is that I don't want to stage manage my family anymore. And this is the part where maybe I will be breaking the illusion, breaking the fourth wall a little bit when it comes to like the process of content creation. When it comes to our travel vlogs, a lot of that is just capturing what's naturally happening in real time, right? Like, we're kind of like, things are happening, we're going places, we're just capturing events as they kind of unfold, capturing our reactions in real time to it. So for the most part, I think our content is pretty like natural, but even with that, there are still some things that require some setup. Like, for example, if we are in one place and we're about to move on to another location, But there are certain shots that we need to get, like, hey, we need to show ourselves like walking through the space. Sometimes we need to stop what we're doing and be like, okay, let me set up the tripod, make sure everyone's in frame. Okay, and then we're gonna walk from here to here, just so that we have that shot, and it kind of helps to pull everything together and make the story make sense. But even little things like our little destination reveals where we're like, hey, we're at the airport, where are we going? And then we cover the lens and we're like, oh my God, we're in Rome, we're in Milan. Like those kind of videos also require some setup. We have to put the phone on the tripod. We need to find a spot where we're not in everybody's way. We need to make sure that everybody's in frame. And because I am basically the creator, I do all of the shooting, I do all of the editing, I also handle all of the business stuff. So basically Top Play Family is basically like Carmen. So I end up being basically like the director, where I have to be like, okay, take a little step to the left. Okay, all right, let's do it again, a little more energy. Or it's like we watch it and it's like, oh, like something messed up, someone was making a funny face, or maybe like someone walked by right at that moment that we were supposed to do the reveal and it looks weird. The reality is that you don't always get things on the first take. Sometimes you have to do it twice, sometimes you have to do it 3 times. And that process of like stage managing my family is so frustrating, because I always have to like strike this balance between being aggressive enough so that we actually get what we need and in a timely manner so that we can keep things moving. But then I also have to be like, oh, well, I can't be too bossy because then like I'm gonna piss people off and da-da-da-da. So it's just like so much emotional labor involved in making family content, and I'm just like so over it. It's exhausting. Anyone that's watching this who does make family content, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I can't tell you how amazed I was. The very first sisters trip I did, this was with my sister Wawa, and we went to this resort. And we just had like a few simple shots to get. But this is the kind of thing that with my family would have taken like 45 minutes, right? Because it's like, oh my God, we have to like do the setup, and then, oh, this person's mad at this person, and now we have to cheer them up, and da-da-da-da, and now they're mad at me because I'm being too bossy, da-da-da-da, like all of this like mess. Like something that normally would have taken us 45 minutes as a family took literally 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So it's just like the labor involved in making family content is insane. And the emotions that have to be managed, like I don't want to have to do that anymore. So all of this is to say that if our content has seemed different lately, you are not mistaken. It has been different. We've been slowing down on travel. We have been taking a break from doing long form content. And I have made a very deliberate shift away from family content. And here's the thing, if all I wanted was views, I would homeschool the girls forever, and we would make nothing but resort reviews and flight reviews, because that's what performs best. And we would never take another trip that wasn't a resort. And we would never step on a plane without it being like business class or first class. But there's more to life than just views. So when the pandemic hit, it felt like a little bit of an opportunity for us to change our lives, because we had to close down our martial arts school, which was the sort of bricks and mortar, like local business that Serge and I had run for over a decade. And because of that, suddenly there was like, we didn't have the financial burden of having to meet those fixed expenses every month. So suddenly we had more cash to spend on travel. And then at the same time, pre-pandemic, we had already decided to try homeschooling the girls for a couple years and do more travel and just see how that goes. And so it was sort of like everything kind of fell perfectly into place. And we were like, you know what? Now that we have this opportunity, we're no longer tied to having to be in New York and having to check in on the business regularly. We didn't have to pay rent and payroll and all that stuff anymore. The girls didn't have to be in school anymore. And so this was kind of an opportunity for us to be like, hey, let's go hard on travel. Let's go hard on content and see what happens. And it was great, you know, so we basically did that for about 3 years and no regrets. It was a great experience. We had incredible travels. We saw amazing things. We connected with so many of you, but we're in a different era now. And that was never meant to be forever. That was kind of like a, hey, let's try this and see what happens kind of thing. So we did it. It was great. But now we're ready for something else. And if you look at this just with cold, hard logic, it's a terrible business decision, right? Because all of our brand deals, all of our travel partnerships, a lot of them are driven by us being a family unit. So for us to move away from making family content is actually a terrible, terrible business decision. But you know, when I'm sitting with Sean and Ella and they're showing me the TikToks they've made or the videos that are like on their camera roll of them goofing around with their friends, and I see how happy they are and how connected they are with their friends and how much they're enjoying school and how much they're learning, I realize that as bad of a business decision this was, this really was the best possible decision I could have made from a parenting perspective. We've had to say no to a lot of trips this year because I didn't want to pull the girls out of school. We used to do that when they were in elementary school, and it was not a big deal because if they missed one day, they didn't miss that much. But now that they're in middle and high school, academics are a lot more intense. And so missing even 1 day, 2 days really puts them behind. So in the last 12 months, we've turned down a lot of trips that would have been great, but that really weren't worth me pulling the girls out of school for. So I'm okay with losing out on some travel opportunities. I'm also okay with the inevitable financial hit we're gonna take as a result of pivoting our content away from family content. Because again, I don't want our lives to just revolve around travel and content forever. So moving forward, the family's gonna show up now and then, but for the most part, it's gonna be just me. And not everyone is gonna like this new direction, and that's okay, I get it. There's definitely creators I follow who have pivoted and I'm like, I really like their old stuff. So I totally understand, I'm not gonna take it personally. But for those of you who wanna come along on this new journey and learn about me as an individual outside of the family unit, welcome, and I hope you enjoy what's ahead.